What do you know of the Ocoee Massacre? All right. Now I'm gonna tell you a little secret here. I well, maybe it's not a secret, but I uh, learned some Black history when I was in college. My teacher, Dr. Camilla Westenberg, uh, taught uh, African American literature. So this was like slave narratives and stuff like that from the slaves that could write. And this was a couple of classes. I took two of her classes that gave me some insight into some of the goings on um, in during slavery and during Jim Crow in this country. And so some of these things I heard about here and there. Also, I've been Black my whole life. So naturally, there's people that try to teach you a little bit about your history that you're not going to learn in seventh grade or whatever. And then Q and I, our other show, Civic Cipher, we have a segment that we did for many years called The Way Black History Fact. And so we discussed a lot of, unfortunately, massacres and thefts and burnings and whippings and all kinds of vile things, practices, experiments, whatever. Um, and rarely did we have happy moments from Black history that we could talk about because the necessary things to provide context often looked very bad. So I know that I've heard of this before, but when Q brought it up today, I was like, you know what? Let's put that in the show. Let's have the conversation in real time um, rather than having the conversation in our production meeting. So we're about to have, as we like to do sometimes, our production meeting with you during the show. So I will share from EJI.org. That is the Equal Justice Initiative. This is an organization that we're big fans of. And if you feel like an ally, you feel like a person that wants to become more empathetic, you want to learn how to be more supportive uh, of all communities, please check out EJI.org. Again, that's the Equal Justice Initiative. Brian Stevenson, the founder and the director of EJI.org, is a personal hero of mine. I just think the world of that guy. All right, EJI.org. All right, on Election Day, November 2nd, 1920, white mobs in Ocoee, Florida, began a campaign of terror and violence designed to stop Black citizens in Ocoee from voting that resulted in the deaths of as many as 30 Black people and the destruction of the Black community. Oof. All right. With the election approaching, Black residents in Ocoee who own land and businesses were eager to vote. Despite a terrorizing and threatening march by white citizens through the streets of Orlando 3 days earlier aimed at deterring Black people from participating in the election, Mose Norman and other Black Americans went to the polls to vote on November 2nd. Mr. Norman, however, was turned away on the grounds that he had allegedly not paid his poll tax. After seeking advice from John Chaney, an Orlando judge, Mr. Norman again attempted to vote. This time, armed white men stationed at the polls immediately assaulted him. He fled to the nearby home of his friend and business associate, Julius July Perry. As word spread of Mr. Norman's attempts to vote, a mob of white residents seeking to capture him and Mr. Perry surrounded and burned Mr. Perry's home. Mr. Norman escaped, but the mob severely wounded Mr. Perry, who was arrested, taken to Orlando, and locked in the Orange County Jail. The next morning, a lynch mob took Mr. Perry from police custody, brutally beat him, and hanged him within sight of Judge Chaney's home. His lifeless body was shot repeatedly. Over a 2 day span, a mob of white Floridians killed as many as 30 Black people and burned 25 Black homes, 2 Black churches, and a Masonic lodge in Ocoee. Estimates of the total number of Black Americans killed during the violence range from 6 to over 30. There is no adequate accounting of this violence because neither the government nor the newspapers at the time thought it was important to establish how many Black people were killed During the attack, the Ocoee Election Day Massacre represents one of the bloodiest days in American political history. Black survivors fled the community, never to return. The entire black community of Ocoee was driven out within a year, forced to abandon or sell land and homes they owned. No black Americans resided in the city of Ocoee for the following 60 years. The lynching of Mr. Perry and countless others, and the destruction of the black community with impunity showed black residents that exercising their legal right to vote made them targets for deadly attacks and that they could not depend on authorities for protection. All right, Q.
It's important to tell painful stories like this because when you do the type of work that Ramses and I do, there's an almost constant gaslighting involved. People really treat us like we're making these things up. And for those that acknowledge it, it's acknowledged in a very dismissive way. When you talk about things like reparations, the response is often, that was so long ago, get over it. This massacre happened in 1920. My mother was born in 1945. I think people have a mental picture that these were generations ago, hundreds of years ago, that things like this were happening, where you could get assaulted and shot and beat and murdered for simply being black and having the audacity to think that you had rights. Not for fighting, not for offending, not for disrespecting, but for being alive and thinking that you mattered. So this is why I have always gotten so upset when people treated Black Lives Matter like it was some controversial statement. And I express it then and I express now. And this is, Rams and I know and care about the people that run the organizations, grassroots and otherwise, for Black Lives Matter. I just wish it would have been called something else from the jump, because we are flawed human beings. We're not perfect. And decisions that were made by the organization took wind out of the sails of the movement, of the statement that Black Lives Matter. That is a fact. That is an objective truth. It's not about people. It's not about a building. It's not about an organization. It's about the true meaning behind those words and us needing to reaffirm that we deserve to exist. And imagine that by simply affirming that we deserve to exist, we were met with resistance. We couldn't even get that off, Rams. We couldn't even say we matter without it being controversial, without it causing a resistance or a negative reaction from people. White lives matter and all lives matter were said in response. You know who I don't see outside now while we see immigrants getting torn from their families and citizens that are black and brown being torn from their families, detained, arrested, zip tied, handcuffed, beaten? I don't see the all lives matter people anymore. It's funny how that works.
I'm not a. I don't like these stories. I owe it to uh, the people that came before me that lived short, hard lives and died. Sometimes the last word that they heard in their lifetime was the N word. I owe it to those people that fought so that my life could look the way that it does, to remember their stories. But I really don't like it. It's just like, imagine being born into a world that was prepared to hate you and you thought you were a good person.
The world that hated you for being born.